One of life's rarest events that take place is when you see a sequel to something be great and live up to the original. Today, we are talking about the video game experience I just had with a sequel that can be talked about within those rare moments, and it's around one of the classic first-person shooter video game franchises in Doom. I played the modern 2016 remake/reboot for the first time recently, and it has now become one of my favorite games of all time. A game that revitalizes the classic first-person shooter genre by putting the brand of run-and-gun games to the test. In this video, we will analyze its sequel, Doom Eternal, that I just played for the first time. A game that carried over those innovative mechanics, immersive world building, and dynamic combat that establish both games as powerful examples of where gaming can go when it celebrates both progression and nostalgia in the best ways. To all the fans of the Doom franchise watching this video, where do you stand on this game? Did you think that it would live up to that 2016 game and become almost as good as it was? Let me know down below in the comments. When diving deep into the idea of when we find those rare moments of a sequel almost being better than the original, Doom Eternal goes to lengths that I think were just about there with its quality. It's a very, very good sequel that I think is just a tad below the 2016 game in my personal opinion. The goal of a sequel is to improve on what came before while also keeping certain things consistent that the first game did very well. I think that Doom Eternal does that in stride and at times almost outdoes itself without going too far to the point where you could easily say that this game is too much at times to handle. It brings back the great run and gun gameplay, it brings back around the nostalgia Easter eggs and fun stuff that people love to see, it continues to add extensive lore, and it also tries to improve on all of those things combined. That is what the job of a sequel is meant to do, even if, say for example, story-wise it might go in a little bit of a different direction to what you would have expected to see from the game before it. Doom Eternal's story, in a way, doesn't necessarily move too far off from what you would have expected to have seen happen after the ending to the 2016 game. Again though, what the sequel does is improve upon it and make it more epic in scale, which I think is the only possible path you could have gone with the story. It's a build-up to a possible end of the franchise that I think would satisfy a lot of people, and that's a good thing based on what I've described already enough of what the job of a sequel is meant to do. When delving more into that story and the actual lore itself and its influence on it, this is where I actually find one of my only minor criticisms of the game. I recognize more than anything that lore in video games is necessary when it comes to building up something and making someone interested in what you have to offer. In order to get people to care about what it is that you're offering, you have to make the game feel appealing, from its characters to the world and so much other backstory that you could easily have exposited to you through dialogue. Doom 2016 and Eternal play it well, where it does both through character dialogue and through these codex entries that give you a readable rundown on the lore of certain things. In the 2016 game, I thought it was small enough and desirable enough to read to where I wasn't feeling like it was too much to take in. Sadly, with Doom Eternal, I did at times feel like the lore backstory on a couple different things felt like it was trying to outdo itself. Doom Eternal has so much more new backstory and development of its characters off the 2016 game that at points, depending on how much you care or think it adds to the plot, you are going to read it or you're not going to want to or care at all. In the 2016 game, I at many moments felt compelled enough to want to read a lot of the stuff I was picking up. But in Doom Eternal, at many moments, it just became an afterthought after I would pick up the codex entries. I'd say that the biggest issue revolving around this is because of the fact that the game is so fast-paced and chaotic more than the 2016 game that it felt like I never really got a chance to catch my breath, and even when I could, I didn't really think I needed to go and read those codex entries. I was more locked into going into the next level and killing demons. Some of these codex entries are small, and some others are more compact with information. Sometimes the excessive detail and also the complexity of reading through the names of certain characters and locations would confuse me and almost make me lost to the point where I actually started to care less. At multiple points in the story, I actually kind of lost track of where I was and where my Doom guy was going to. In general, I knew where the story was going. I think most normal people would know. It's a build-up to when all of hell has invaded Earth and a cataclysmic event is coming that would wipe out the planet and humanity, and you must stop it. all I did was keep that in mind the entire time, and that's what allowed me to keep going because I was that intrigued in the footnotes version of the story as opposed to the much more complex background stuff. Again, that's just more of a minor complaint with the story and the lore, and for the most part, I still love a lot of that stuff, and I love that the developers put time into it. Of course, you don't have a great Doom game unless you have incredible gameplay, and I've already talked about this to death when I did my video on the 2016 game, which you should definitely go check out. It's some of the most fun video game gameplay I have ever had the chance to experience. Doom Eternal, most of the time, if not, is the exact same thing as the first, although the only difference this time is that the game adds in a new upgrade to weapons, and in addition, it has new movement systems. The 2016 game was more on the ground and standard, whereas Eternal is more chaotic with its dash mechanics, wall climbing, and use of monkey bars to have you swinging to fly around. This new form of movement may be seen by some as a progression of those systems, but it could also be seen by some as an unnecessarily added gimmick to it. It turns the movement into a more essential part of combat rather than just a means of getting from one place to another. It turns the gameplay from run and gun into dash/jump and gun. It really does feel like it's a platforming game with how the levels are designed, coupled with the movement. It asks a lot of you sometimes with how much you have to focus on, and constant demand for multitasking can feel overwhelming or even exhausting for a player who might prefer a slower, more tactical pace akin to the first game. I probably rarely ever found myself getting a kill when on the ground. A lot of them were done in the air when using all the weapons. And speaking of the weapons, what more do I have to say? They fucking rock. Thankfully, even with the movement changes, they don't affect the gravity of how much weight the guns carry. Killing demons has never been more appealing and awesome, along with the gruesome glory kills that are just as satisfying than the first game. The violence is also notched up a lot more this time around with the added gore effects, as you actually see the body parts and flesh get shredded down when you shoot them. There is truly nothing more satisfying than that. Not even the best sex in the world can live up to that. Joking, but you get my point. I'm basically saying that nothing touches this gameplay when it comes to shooter games. Most shooters can be fun, but then there's also satisfying fun. You get a visceral reaction to when certain kills can happen, and it just makes you want to keep doing it. In other gameplay aspects, you have the music, which I will say definitely is a downgrade from the first game. At the time when Doom Eternal came out all those years ago, I had heard and saw news about the fact that a shakeup happened with who did the music in the first game, and they didn't return for the second, which sucks because it's not as good here. Weapon upgrades, player upgrades, menu systems, and all that other stuff is decently put into the game, and again, like the 2016 version, is helpful when it needs to be, and it doesn't feel like it would be there without being necessary at points. In particular, this really helps with locating those added bonuses, such as the extra life, and the secrets of which are either codex entries, Easter egg toys, portraits, album record labels, and the cheat code discs. Now, admittedly, this game is a little harder than the first, so the extra lives thing, depending on what difficulty you play on, can be a little unnecessary, but I understand why it is in the game. It gives it a more arcadey feel to a degree, but all the nostalgia stuff with the Easter eggs and secrets is just perfection. In the game, your Doom Guy character has his own floating fortress called the Doom Fortress, floating in space orbiting Earth, and one of the rooms inside is your own personal office where all the meta-like stuff in the world is held. The office is filled with hidden details that players can discover, such as nods to the Doom lore, including references to past Doom games, and even humorous Easter eggs. There is a subtle tongue-in-cheek atmosphere with little details like the Doom Slayer's pet dog that add personality and make it feel more like a unique lived-in space. These little touches make it feel more real and less like just another game hub. Yes, you could say that some people might think this could take them out of the game because, in a way, it's taking an aspect of it less seriously than what the actual game is asking of you to feel. But I personally like the meta stuff, obviously as long as it's done in a way that is beneficial instead of only being done for nostalgia bait. But I've already played both games, and I can tell you right now for a fact that the developers didn't just put this in there for the sake of it. Finally, we have the multiplayer mode. Now, unfortunately, with my Doom 2016 video, I was unable to play the multiplayer because the multiplayer in that game is truly dead. Not a single human soul on the planet is playing it. Thankfully though, I was able to get a couple of games in Eternal for its battle mode multiplayer mode. Essentially, it's a 1v2 style mode where one person plays Doom Guy and the other two play some form of any of the demons that exist in the game. I think it's a new addition to a multiplayer mode in the series that they didn't do in the first game, and I think it's a good way to innovate on what you could possibly do around a multiplayer mode. It brings in an idea for PvE, but instead makes it PvP. I kind of wish that they brought over the Doom Guy versus Doom Guy mode from the first game along with this, but I digress. The battle mode is fun for what it is, although I'd say that it is definitely a lot easier to play as the Doom Guy. I think it is the kind of mode that you could play for a little bit, and then over time, you may not care for it as much. Doom the Dark Ages, which is coming out very soon as the third game in this series, is actually not going to have a multiplayer mode, and in some ways, I think that's a missed opportunity because I think that there are plenty of good ideas on the table for them to make a PvE style mode where you team up with other players online to fight demons. Kind of like Warzone Firefight in Halo as an example to use. I really love that mode, especially in Halo 5. It's one of the biggest reasons why I have as much playtime on that game as I do. I think that that would really work for a lot of players, but sadly they're not doing that, so I guess we'll just have to work with the single player mode for what that game is going for. So there you have it. That is how Doom Eternal became the ultimate sequel. On a grading scale, which I don't normally do, I'd give the first game a 10 out of 10 and Eternal between a 9 and a 9.5. Very, very solid game, and I can't wait to play Doom the Dark Ages when it comes out. I still find it weird that that game is a prequel, but hopefully the gameplay can take over from whatever story that they have planned. What do you all think? Leave your comments down below and let's have a nice and respectful conversation about it. Thank you all for stopping by my channel. Hit the like button if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new here and turn on that notification bell. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and I will see you all soon for the next video. This is Orion, signing out.